I want to show you guys the new neck gaiter, and I'm gonna open it for you guys. Look at that. Look at that. It's nice. It's my signature right there. It wasn't designed by me at all. I had nothing to do with this. The company that's behind this believe in my vision and design some things, and this is one of the things they designed. It's very great material. I mean, it's really good material. Made in USA. Welcome to the Carl Jackson Podcast. Tonight, my guest is gospel legend icon Donald Lawrence. This was a hard interview to get because he doesn't really do interviews, one-on-one podcasts, things like that. And I get it, he's a legend, so he doesn't have to. He can choose what he wants to do. But I got him. I can't believe it. This was an in-depth interview. We recorded this in my office because we're still in the middle of pandemic. Oh my God. So anyway, let's check it out. I think you're going to enjoy it. I love it. I had so many questions to ask him, and he pretty much answered everything I asked. Welcome to the Carl Jackson Podcast. I am happy and delighted and excited today because today I have a guest that it took me months to convince him to do my little show. But he finally agreed after I sent him some money. The check's in the mail, by the way. And no, I mean, it's just when me started a new television network and me, doing the podcast, I didn't know how to approach this guy because it's not like this is Jimmy Fallon calling him. But I've known him for years. He's a great guy, multiple Grammy Award and Stellar Award winner. Probably would go down in gospel as probably the number one gospel producer and arranger in terms of choirs. He's just a phenomenal person to do this show with us today. So without further ado, Mr. Donald Lawrence.
Hey man, what's up? How you doing?
Good, sir. How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm really good. It's very, very nice to get the chance to do this.
Yes. Thank you, finally. So I have many questions to ask you. The first question I want to ask you is, where are you from and where were you born and how did you get into gospel music or just music?
Okay, I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina, but I grew up in Gastonia, North Carolina, which is kind of like a small town about 30 minutes south of Charlotte, like a suburb. I grew up with my aunt. I didn't grow up with my mom or my dad. I grew up with my mom's sister, my aunt. It was just two of us, so that's why I kind of act like an only child a lot. It was just us, and I grew up in a little small Pentecostal church in Gastonia, North Carolina. And that's my start. And, of course, there, when you grow up as a Pentecostal kid, you don't have that much to do. So music was that thing, So I definitely did music. And, hey, that's just what started it. That was my outlet, music.
Did you ever see yourself as a child doing what you're doing now? And did you see it going this far?
I always dreamed. I was a big dreamer because I was a big daydreamer because it was just me. When you're kind of like an only kid, not that I don't have siblings, but I grew up with just my aunt. So it was definitely like I was an only child. You daydream big. So yeah, I always dreamed that I would be doing music and being in entertainment, but I really thought I would be doing Broadway. That was my goal. My goal really wasn't to do what I do now. I figured I would do that eventually, but more as a passion project, not as a career. I really always thought that I would be on Broadway. That would be my career.
So why was you so into Broadway? I mean, it's obvious reasons, the music and the staging costume, but why were you so drawn to Broadway?
I don't know. It just, it wasn't that I was brought up in Broadway culture or that my aunt she was just regular Pentecostal mother, It just was in my genes or something. And I loved the song. I think I loved the storytelling with song, the storytelling with the libretto, with the lyric, kind of almost being like a monologue, but it was still to notation. So it's something about that as a kid, it just always spoke to me. My friends from childhood, they said you would always go see a music or whatever on TV and come out and reenact everything for us. So they laugh at me today based on what I do, because it was like, we knew you was gonna do this because that's all you do. You come out and try to show us how to block us, show us. So it was that. And then, you know, as the gospel music started showing up in me, I started combining the two. I was like, why can't you take gospel music and make it do kind of like Rodgers and Hammerstein or something like that? So that's kind of where that was. But I always loved musical theater. I always loved song and scene and song and storytelling, and a song being just a continuation of the dialogue, but in notation. I just always thought that was so unique and smart to be able to write that way.
Wow. So tell me, I read somewhere you went to Cincinnati Conservatory or something?
Yeah, Cincinnati Conservatory of Music, and I studied musical theater there. During the time when I went, it was the #1 school for musical theater. The department was developed by this guy by the name of Worth Gardner, and he was why everybody went there to study with him. And you know, I auditioned and I got in, and the journey started.
Wow. Can I ask, why were you raised with your aunt versus your parents? Can I ask that, or can I?
Sure. No, you can shoot. You can shoot. The reason why I was raised with my aunt instead of my parents is my mom. My mom really had, I mean, but the raw thing is she ended up having an affair, and I was a product of the affair. And she transitioned from her husband, which was my stepfather, and my father stayed married to his wife. So I was in the middle, and I ended up being with my aunt. And I mean, I think that, you know, I always think that when that happens, it was meant to be. I feel like there are some kids that's just meant to get here, and they have to get here the way they get here. That's why I'm not against people getting rid of kids, but you just never know who you're going to get rid of. Because I think that, you know, the way you get here is just the way you get here. It doesn't always have to be the same way. So I don't have like abandonment issues, or I don't have issues like that. I mean, I think I was supposed to grow up with my aunt. If I hadn't grown up with her, I would be a totally different person. And that's just kind of where it was. I mean, I ended up being cool with my mom, you know. When I got a little bit older, we spent a lot of time together, but she still felt like an aunt. She didn't feel like my mom because I bonded with my aunt. So, you know, that, and then I have half siblings on both sides. So I got to know, I really knew my mom's side more because I was with my aunt. So the maternal side, I was just around my cousins. It was 13 of them. So she had 13, she had one brother and 12 and 11 sisters. So it's a big family on the side. I grew up around them. So my mom, you know, we always say the Lawrences was the different of the whole clan, because everybody was really close except for my mom. She was just in her own world. She may come to family things, she may not. And so they always tease my nieces and everything that we're kind of like them Lawrences, your mother, y'all are the distant ones. But I grew up being around my cousins, so I still was a lot around my mom's family. I just didn't grow up around her as much as I grew up around some of my aunts. Like one of my other aunts taught me how to drive till me get my license. So I really grew up almost being closer to her sisters than her.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. Did any of them get to, meaning your immediate family? I'm assuming some of them are alive and some of them are not. Did any of them get to see you as the celebrity part of you?
Yeah, yeah. You know, my aunt definitely got to see it before she passed away. I had kind of gotten going, you know, not where I am now, but I definitely had gotten going. She was getting to see me on TV. I started doing music really young, so they always knew I would do music. She was the one who put me through college, so she knew that's what I wanted to do. She sent me to Cincinnati Conservatory, and you know, she was there. But all of my aunts got to see me, and still we had, of all of them, is one still living. So we call her Aunt Lean, but she's Evelyn. So she's been to a lot of my big things, and she'll say, "Please do Back to Eden." That's my song, you know. So it's just, and so she was the baby sister of them all, and she's the last one left of the whole crew of them. It was a big family.
So your mom is still alive?
No, my mom's not alive. Her baby sister is.
Her baby, okay, gotcha.
Her baby sister is Aunt Evelyn.
Wow. So talk to me a little bit about how you got in
the industry. The only thing I know about the industry is from Brian Spears, which I've known for years, but he only knows certain parts of it. So how did you really get started, and when did you know that you were about to go for a ride?
It's such a journey. It's a very, very unique journey. If you see me looking down, it's my dog. She is just very spoiled. She hates for me to be on the Deja she's very spoiled. She hates for me to be on the phone, and she just does things anytime I get there. So she's like, I hear her smacking, I have to be making sure she's not chewing on something she should be. So that's what's distracting me. If you see me look around a little bit, she's right here at my feet moving around. It's a very unique journey. After leaving Cincinnati Conservatory, I went home. Of course, leaving Cincinnati, being in school, being around musical theater people and doing what we do all the time, I got back home and I was like, oh, I got to do something. I've been doing music for 4 years. I can't come back home, just get a job and not do this when I've been training for a whole time. So me and a friend of mine, her name was Robin Rose Stewart. We grew up together. She was in first grade with me. She was like my sister. I used to write and she used to sing. So when I got home, I said, hey, there's this place, it was this place in Charlotte called PTL, Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. It was a Christian music theme park. And at that particular time, that was its height. So it was doing tourism second to Disney. It was just massive.
Huge. No, it was huge.
Oh yeah, it was second to Disney then in tourism.
My parents took me, and I remember right before the scandal broke, Wendy's was about to build like the big.
It was going to be the largest Wendy's in the world. I was working there then. The largest Wendy's in the world. So what happened was,
you and BB know each other then. From there,
that's what I'm gonna get to. Like,
okay, sorry.
No problem. When I got home, I said I was there for a minute. I had to figure out something to do. Of my crew of friends, they're all really talented, but I was always the one with the go-getter. I was the one who said, okay, y'all, we're gonna go do this. I put it together. They just follow along. So I told them, I said, hey, we're gonna make a demo. We're gonna send it to PTL. I hear BB and CC are leaving. Maybe they'll find another. They want a couple of other black people there. So I did. And it was quiet for about 2 months, and then all of a sudden we got a letter, and they said, we really like the demo. We're doing this musical for Christmas. We would love for you guys to come and audition for it. We went, and they said, we want to put you in a musical. So they did, and after the musical, they liked our personality and what we did. So they said, we would love to put you guys here full time. And they said, give us a minute, we'll think about it. That was like it was a Christmas play. So it was Christmas time. By that next May, they hired us full time. So Robin, who was just working a regular factory job, they hired her to work there full time. She couldn't believe she was getting, I negotiated our salaries. She couldn't believe that she was working, singing full time and not doing a regular job, because she was just working in the factory. And I had just come from school, and I said, let me negotiate, because I'm just gonna say, look, I got my education, you're gonna have to do this. So we went there and we started working there. While I was there for a year, the middle of that year, one of my friends from Fire Baptist Church, who was in my choir, our district choir, he was a close friend. He called me out of the blue and said, hey, I'm on the set. He became a model. So I'm on the set and I was playing your song. I had a demo of this song called Superman. He was playing and he said, I want you to talk to somebody. And then I said, okay. And then Stephanie Mills came to the phone and she said, this song is beautiful. I would love to write songs with you. And I said, I never wrote any R&B stuff because I didn't listen to it growing up. I said, but I know you and I know your theater stuff because I just graduated with musical theater. So I know your Broadway catalog. I just don't know anything else. And she said, I would love to write songs with you. And I said, I think I could write some urban songs. I was just like, I think a songwriter is just a songwriter. You just have to know the story to write it. So I would love to do that. So she said, okay, well, once I finish and get things going, I'm gonna call you. We're gonna take some time to write. 2 weeks later, she called me back and said, Don, I have a problem. My band just left me. I'm out on tour and I need a musical director. Would you come and be my musical director? And so, I was like, I didn't even know what to say. And what happened was I said, I don't think I'm ready for that. I was like, I never did this before, but if you give me a year to study your music and to learn it backwards and forward and come back to me, I will come out. But I don't think I'm ready to do that right now, because I never wanted to be a musical director or even a producer. I just wanted to go to Broadway. That was it. I wasn't one of those kids who started off wanting to be a producer. I wanted to write music songs and be on stage. That was it. So I don't know how I was so mature to turn that down, but I did. And it's the tourist in me. We don't like to be the dumb one in the room. And so I'm just like, I'm gonna go out there and all these people been out on the road. I ain't never been here. And she put me in charge. No, I don't want to do that. So I did that. I made sure I studied her music. I didn't think she was gonna come back for the next year. She said, okay, I just finished my new album. We're gonna plan for a new tour. You told me to come back and ask you. And so I'm here. What are you gonna do? And I was terrified, but I said, okay. So I stayed in PTO for a year. Robin stayed for 4. I left to go on tour with Stephanie. And that started my journey in the business, really professional. Even though PTO, we were there, we were in front of millions of people, for a year, but that really started me. And I came on as her musical director. Never been a musical director at all before. I came in, I started doing arrangements for the show. Of course, I had taken lighting in theater, I had taken makeup, I had taken stage, I knew all that stuff. So I was able to apply that. And, I got ready for her tour. And the tour was I Feel Good All Over. And I tell everybody this, I say, this is my first gig. Our very first show was the Arsenio Hall show. I said, I was terrified. Like, it was my very first gig professionally out there like that, was the Arsenio Hall show. She was starting a tour and she started it with there. And I saw Eddie Murphy and Arsenio talking about themselves on stage and how they would just get lost in their conversation. And the artist got mad at them because they went over time. And they was like, I think the artist was Stephanie Mills. And I was like, it was. And that was our first show. I was actually there. I was actually there. So I was like, wow, it's so the irony in it is just crazy. So, they were talking online the other day about coming to America too. And they were going back and talking about Arsenio's show, this and that and the other. So that started the journey right there. And I thought the first year was cumbersome because I was really finding my way. I tell Stephanie now, because we're still the best of friends, I said, you threw me out in the water. I didn't know where I was going. She said, but I knew you could do it, because she didn't help me. They just was like, do it. And, I thought the first year was a little cumbersome, but by the second year, I got my footing. I started adding stuff. And before you know it, people would come to her show and say, who did the arrangements? Who did the singers? And she was like, Donald. It just kept going and going and going. And, before that, everybody would just start coming and hitting me and asking me, yo, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? Stephanie came to me and said, you know what? A lot of my friends from the Wiz passed away. And I would like to redo my song from the musical Home. And she said, I want to make it feel differently. So I did the new arrangement of Home when she cut it. That's why it feels so gospel at the end.
Yeah.
That's why I did that. I had a guy group by the name of Company, and we did the demo. And the producer at that particular time, he didn't use us. He went and used Take 6, because Take 6 was just coming. But that's where he got the idea to do guys and stuff at the end of it, because that's the way I did the demo.
Wow.
That started. That's really kind of how it started.
I didn't know any of that. Wow.
Yeah, it's so really, and this is another thing that's so funny in the journey. When Stephanie lost her musical director, the musical director and part of the singers left to go start singing and working with a new singer. And that singer was Whitney Houston.
Oh, wow.
Yep, that's what that was right when she was getting started, and they left Steph to go there. And Steph had to put a new band together. And that's kind of how we got started,
So were you at PTL at the time BB and CC were there, or did you replace them?
We didn't replace them because they didn't replace BB and CC. They just brought on other Black talent.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it was 4 Black people there. At that time, it was Alicia Williamson. It was a lady by the name of Brenda. It was myself and Robin. And you got to realize with PTL, a lot of people don't know that the inner workings of that, it was shows happening all the time. It wasn't just a TV show. Right. It was a TV show. It was Buffalo Park. Water Park, because I was there when they built. So we was doing all of that stuff. And it was Love Came Down, the dinner theater.
Yep, I remember that.
So it was all of that.
You guys were working all day. It wasn't like just...
It was like a theme park. It was like working in Opryland or Disney or something like that. It was that kind of gig, So that's what we did.
It was basically a gig where you were pushing all day, every day.
It was tough. It was tougher on me than it was Robin because of my theater background. I could choreograph. So they made me do a lot of things. I played, they made me play. They made me do choreo. They got their money's worth. They really, they worked me. They work. She would have days off, and I would be there. I would be so tired because they really figured out I was I could multitask so much. They made sure I did it. Yeah.
So what did you learn? Oh my God! Now I got 4 more other questions. So from just PTL, what did you learn the most about being at PTL? Because you got to remember, I was definitely a kid. Like I was probably 7 or 8, but I remember going, and I remember I had never seen a Christian operation that was like Disneyland or Disney World, and that was like, for a child, that's like mind blowing, right?
Oh yeah,
that's like mind blowing. So what did you learn being an expert? I'm sure you were extremely young and still learning stuff. What did you learn from that experience?
You know, I'm a quick thinker and sometimes a quick learner, especially then. What I did to make sure I fit in quickly was to apply it for summer gigs. So when you're studying musical theater, the summer off, you go audition for stuff. You go audition for Opryland. You go audition for Kings Island. So I applied that. I was like, oh, this is just like that, but it's just all Christian. So going in, once I figured out what it was, because I didn't know going, once I got there and watched it, I was like, oh, this is just like all my friends that are doing Opryland, whatever, but it's just this. So I applied that, and I had to train Robin while we were doing it, but she never done anything like that. She was straight church. So I would train her while we were doing it so we could just keep up and do our thing. And then they definitely made us do stuff together and stuff apart, but we did a lot of stuff together. Sometimes we do our own concerts, just the two of us. And what I learned there was what I've learned out throughout my journey, how to speak all languages of music, meaning that, you put me in a Broadway room, I know how to talk. You put me in an opera room, I know how to talk. You put me in a CCM room, because that was the epitome of CCM then. I know how to talk. It was the epitome of it, yes. It was the epitome of the whole evangelical world. That was right there. So I know how to do that. So it made my scope be very broad. Then I turn around and I go do Stephanie Mills. This is when New Jack was just coming on the scene. So that's why I give Teddy Riley a lot of props, because he's who made me want to produce. Because while I was out on the road with Stephanie, you had to learn how to duplicate what was on her albums live. So I would go in the studio and study all of the producers' tracks so that I could make sure we duplicated it to sound just like the record live. And as I started doing that, I was like, oh, this is produced. And I would look and see Teddy put like 20 kicks here, or he would lay about 15, 20 snares. And I was like, oh, so this is what they're doing. So I started learning that, and that woke up the producer in me, because I never planned on being a music producer, but that woke it up. And then recreating that live, I was like, well, all I gotta do is just do the same kind of thing in the studio, let them record it. So as we started doing live stuff like that, it felt so good. Because the musicians, she allowed me to bring my friends, and they all were from church, but they all knew how to do a lot of things. I was like, this is so cool. I would love to do a live album with a choir, but using this same kind of formula. So I said it was a choir in the Carolina area named Tri-City Singers. One of my best friends was the director then. And he used to go and grab cassette tapes of mine with songs I had written and teach to them. When I would come off the road, they would be singing. I was like, man, this choir can really sing. If I ever do a choir album, I would love to feature them singing my songs. So by the time I got ready to do it, he wasn't a choir director anymore. And the choir had dropped about 15 people. So I told him I'm going to do this album. And I said, what I'm going to do is we're going to reestablish the choir. So I brought 15 of my singing friends that I grew up with, along with who was there, and we reestablished a new choir. And that's how the Tri-City Singers was birthed. So the very first album feels like New Jack. It feels like all these beats.
Yeah.
That's because I took everything that I had learned and just said, let's throw this in the pot. And it's funny because I heard Teddy say this. He said he just grabbed a bunch of genres, threw them in the pot, and the recipe was that. That's what I did, not knowing I was doing it. I just grabbed that. I grabbed my theater, I grabbed my Luther, I grabbed my Whitfield and Crouch influence and my Donald and threw it in the pot. And that's how we ended up with the Tri-City Singers.
That's crazy. And I remember seeing the video, the live concert video in the early 90s or early 90s.
Yeah, probably Bible Stories, maybe.
Bible Stories.
Yeah.
Did that come from that? Bible Stories?
We had an album before that. That was the second album. The first album was called A Songwriter's Point of View. It featured Stephanie. She came into 2 songs with us. It featured Peebo, because Peebo had done a play that I written before. So I had Peebo, I had Stephanie, and the whole part. It was an album of my songs. and I called it A Songwriter's Point of View. That was the very first album. And when we stepped on the stage, you know, people didn't have beats with choirs then. That was the first time they had ever heard that. So I never forget, we came on stage, and the choir came on stage. They were dressed in African chic then. They stepped on the stage, we recorded. I never forget, we recorded 1991. The album came out in 1993.
Right.
And when we stepped on the stage, the audience stood up and just applauded for like about 15, 20 minutes just on the look. Before we sung one note, they couldn't believe the look. It just hit them so hard. So when I hear, you know, people always laugh and they're like, Donald Lawrence was Wakanda way before Wakanda was. I was like, yeah. And I attribute that because once I kind of created our sound, because I knew that was going to be unique for choirs, I was like, okay, we got a sound now that's going to be ours. Because at that particular time, it was a choir time. So it was Ricky, it was Milton Brunson, it was Mississippi Mass, it was John Key, it was Hezekiah, it was Orlando Draper. It was so many choirs. I was like, how can I do a choir album and we find our own lane? Once I found that sound, that urban kind of traditional sound, that urban gospel sound, I was like, okay, we got to have a look. And so my look was inspired by Soul to Soul and Arrested Development. I love that group. Yeah. So really, Tri-City's look was inspired by both of them. I love that look. I said, I want to make the choir look like this. So I dressed the whole choir like that. And that's kind of how we got our resonance. And that started that journey.
So it made me wonder, I was going to ask you, why did you choose to do a gospel choir, considering there were so many choirs and considering that you had just basically done an R&B tour with Stephanie and kind of was able to speak that language, multiple languages? Why did you choose gospel versus just going for, you know, Broadway or R&B?
That's so cool. That's so interesting you asked that, because at that particular time, when you ask me these questions, I go over that, like Stephanie, it's so funny because the group, The Deal, their very last show was Stephanie Mills and The Deal. Babyface in LA announced they were getting ready to start producing as LA and Face. At that particular time, a lot of the managers thought, you got potential to be an urban producer. Are you going to do that? And I thought I was going to do that. But what I learned, and I've always been authentic, it wasn't really as much as I know it. It's not like where I lived. And I always felt like if I did it, you would slightly kind of feel that I did it good, but it wasn't where I lived. Sometimes I wonder what it would be if you had written on and done that. But I don't think it was where I lived, it was where they lived. I learned how to do it well, and people were calling, but I don't know that it was where I live. I think my unique journey was to blend it. And that's kind of what I did. And that's why I did gospel, because I felt like it felt more authentic for me to do this new kind of urban gospel with beats and stuff. And of course, my very first album, A Songwriter's Point of View, was a partnership with Vicky McLatayat, who
Sparrow.
You know her for Discovering Kirk. You wouldn't have the Donald Lawrence sound had Stephanie Mills not given me the opportunity to find that, because it woke up a producer in me. I never wanted to be a producer, but having to duplicate her albums live taught me on the spot how to produce. And that's why I'm so picky with sounds. And I still give like Teddy Riley his props today. I would go study his tracks because they resonated with me, because there was something about them that was gospel, but at the same time it was that hip hop. At the same time it was those beats, and the beats, even though they were drum beats, they reminded me of what we would do as a young choir in church. Because Pentecostal kids we groove hard, you know. So it just reminded me but it was just programmed. And I was like, this just reminded me so much of like the youth choir. So it just resonated with me. And I just took all that I learned and I mixed it together. And you know, what we did was, my first album was, we had MPC there and the drums, and nobody was doing that then. And we kicked it in and the choir sang, and the audience was just mesmerized with it. And that's kind of what started that kind of beat thing with the choirs. And again, I let Vicky Mack hear it, who people know from starting, Kirk. She heard it and she said, oh my God, this is the sound that I want my label to have. Wow. And so we worked out a situation where we partnered, and she released that album. It was our very first release. And she was like, this is what I want to start my label Gospel Century with, because I want it to be a young, kind of fresh, unique kind of thing. And I started there. We worked together. And a lot of people don't know that after that, she said, it's funny, the album was so cutting edge. It was actually too soon, honestly. It was so cutting edge that she said, hey, you know, I got my second artist coming. It's this young guy. And I can't let the album come out after yours, with yours being so sophisticated. I gotta make sure that I keep this. So she said, please listen to this. I don't like the mix. And so she asked me if I would go back and remix the album, his album. And that person was Kirk Franklin. And she was like, I don't have any money, but I'll give you a point on the album. And I didn't, you know, I just was like, I didn't know him. I mean, because I hadn't been on the gospel scene for a while. Then I was with Steph, so I didn't know him. And I mixed the album and I know him. I would hit him and say, well, I'm gonna make this cut right here. Is that okay? You know, I would hit it, but I didn't know him. And I sit in the studio for her and I mixed The Reason Why We Sing. I mixed He's Able. I mixed the whole album. I even edited the album and put it in sequence for her. Like, so a lot of people didn't know that. Yep, absolutely. Kirk will tell you that. She'll tell you too.
I knew it because Brian Spears told me.
Yeah, exactly.
He was driving from LA to Vegas one time years ago, and he goes, you know, this sound is because of Donald Lawrence. And one of the things I couldn't figure out, because I'm from Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, even though I live in San Diego now. But
I love San Diego, by the way. I love San Diego. I love San Diego, by the way.
I ain't leaving.
Just so you know.
Come on, man. Anytime visit.
I love it.
One of the things I remember about that sound was I kept thinking, this is not the Dallas sound. It's polished. Not that Dallas artists are not amazing.
Oh, they're amazing.
I mean, they're amazing. But at that time, I was going, this sound, when you hear that first note to Reason Why We Sing, the melody and the mix and just the feeling of it was so like, ah. And so Brian was like, well, you know, that's from Donald Lawrence. And I was like, and he's like, yep, he just didn't take credit. He just took a point.
You know, I was just doing it to help her. I was just doing it to help her get her label started. You know,
wow.
That was really what I was doing. I was just trying to. No, I mean, I've always kind of been that guy. Like, you know, if I can help somebody get they dream going, I've just always been that. I've just done that.
Guitarist in you.
Yeah, you know, I just like, hey, I see this, do it, and I'm gone on about my business, you know. So that was it. And of course, you know, no one knew it was going to blow up like it did, but it did. It was massive. And
was you shocked when you saw your check from the first check from the record?
You know what? I was shocked, but more than anything, I was just like, I never would have thought it would pay me. I really thought I was just doing it for free. Wow. I didn't think I was going to ever get anything from that. But I thought, don't get me wrong, I thought the music was good. I thought it was going to be a great, successful gospel album. I didn't know that it was going to cross over. No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that because I was thinking like, yo, it didn't have the beats and things like that. Kirk added beats to the second album. You know, the first album was a little bit more straight traditional. So I didn't know that, but once it did, I was like, wow, this is incredible. And of course, that set Vicky on her journey, and everybody was happy.
So as a producer, looking back, what do you think about that album that resonated with people and it crossed over? I remember white people were buying that record, like they weren't even going to church. They like country music. I remember vividly walking to a music store and seeing them buying that record. So
I think it was just the right time, and it was just a good song. The Reason Why We Sing made people feel good. That it was a great message, even though it was straight gospel sounding. The message still was very inspirational. You're the reason why I sing. I think all of that, the way it felt. I think music reaches the heart, and I think that when you make it authentic, that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to do R&B. I didn't know for sure if it would feel like how when bass writes a song. I may have been able to write kind of similar like that, because a lot of people feel like I had those chops, but I don't know if it would have felt the same. I would have just been doing it right. You know how somebody can just do everything right and it just be right, but it just still, that feeling is just, right. You just tell. You know, you can just tell. I'm sure doing film when someone's acting, you can tell when somebody is it or they're acting it. You know, to me, music is like that. You know, they can act it well, but you'll know.
So do you think, so then let me ask the question this way. You mentioned earlier that Teddy Riley had some gospel influences in the beat. I mean, let's be honest. When you listen to Remember That Time, just the track, it sounds like Pentecostal youth church after
young adult choir.
Young adult choir,
just like that. Exactly.
It sounds like Remember That Time is a gospel track. So
yeah, it reminds me of that.
So if Teddy could do that and still make it work, why didn't you feel like you could? It's just a question. I'm just curious as to why do you think you couldn't have made that same flair that Teddy
because
did?
Teddy them
That's straight
still,
gospel.
I understand, but see, Teddy them still, as much as he did that, Teddy them still did clubs and stuff. I never did that, so they still understood what that was supposed to feel like. I would have been just guessing, you know what I'm saying? I would have known, like, but mine would have still felt, I think mine would have felt like church, where his would feel like church and club, because they did church and club. I feel like music is where you live. I didn't live club, so you would have known that I didn't have that address. Now, I might have been on stage with Stephanie as touring. That's not the same thing as the club, you know what I'm saying? I was there with lights and people, and once we finished, I get in the car with her and leave. Band and went party. I never went party. So I didn't have that thing in me to really make sure that really sound well, right? Authentic anyway.
I got it. I heard Pharrell say something about that. He was talking about how when he wrote the song Happy, he was thinking of the mighty clouds of joy. And that was what he was saying I was trying to emulate or imitate, but he made it still pop because he understands pop.
Yeah, he has been doing pop for a minute. So, you know, I think two worlds can come together,
right?
And be authentic, but you got to authentically live both of them. So that way it just feels like you walked that address versus you know where the address is and you could just say, hey, go here and get the right direction, but you didn't live there. So that's kind of why I feel like I didn't do it. I don't know that it would have worked.
Bible Stories is one of the biggest sellers still today, I'm hearing. Why do you think that record still sells, even though it's now 22, 25 years old now?
Probably 25 years. It was 1995.
That thing is still like something that still people play. Why do you think that is? I mean, it's an amazing piece, but what do you think it is that resonates with people that for them to still want to hear that record?
I think timeless songs, timeless never gets old. I think it was conceptual. You know, it was pretty much like my new album. It was theater mixed with choir, and and that's who I was as a kid. You know, so just those things and putting a story together with song and choir, and that I think that's why it still sells. It was just a thing of its own for that particular time. I always tell people, timeless never goes out of style. Timeless is just timeless. It is. Great songs never go out of style. Great songs is great songs. It just lasts. So, you know, we had a lot of singles off that record. Stranger, Peter, Come Let Me Wash Your Feet, When Sunday Comes, I Am God. And so we had like about 6 singles off of that because people really released a lot of singles back then. And I always was a person that wanted the whole album to be good. I didn't want B cuts. I really wanted an album full of singles. And I didn't think of it commercially. I just knew I wanted it to be an album full of great songs because growing up, when I would listen to Crouch or the Hawkins or Benny Cummins, every song was great. And I was like, I want to make albums where all of the songs are good, unique in their own space, but good. I don't want B cuts. I want everything to be great in A cut in its space, you know. So I think that's why that album still circulates.
So you went solo. After a while, you went solo. I Speak Life, that album is a classic album.
Thank you.
I love that record.
That was fun to do.
Is just freaking phenomenal, if I could say the word freaking.
Yeah, you can. Thank you.
One of the things I realized with your work is you study before you implement whatever you're doing, and that's why it's so good. But one of the things I noticed was you must really study the Word of God or the Bible because your lyrics are so unique, but it's still the Bible. And it's like Andre Crouch could do that too, where they could take a scripture and literally make it
singable.
You ever heard, right?
Yeah. He used to tell me that all the time. He used to tell me that. Yeah, really? He used to always say, you remind me of myself. If there's anybody out here that reminds me of myself, you remind me of myself. But he was really kind of like a mentor. So we would talk, and sometimes I would have something and I would call him. I hear myself doing this sometimes when young writers hit me and say, I want you to hear something. And I would go like, what's the lyric? That's what Andre used to say. I would say, I got this song, I want you to hear. He said, what's the lyric? And if I gave him the lyric, he said, that's good, son, that's good. And I find myself doing that to some of the young writers when they'll hit me and say, I have something to hear. I said, what's the lyric? Because I immediately want to know what the subject matter is before I even hear the melody of the song. I want to know what are you talking about? And that's probably what you hear. I like studying the Bible not just from a religious perspective or to be deep or anything like that. I think they're just interesting stories. They're interesting just transcended wisdom there, you know. And I like grabbing that, figuring out how to put it to melody and make people think about things and think about how to live their best life. So that's why I like to write from the scripture a lot. I just find a lot of wisdom there and figure out ways to uniquely put it to song.
No, I think it's amazing how you do that. I mean, I think it's amazing. When you were growing up, who were your influences? You mentioned Andre Crouch, you mentioned the Hawkins. Who was like your biggest influence in gospel or R&B? Probably.
My biggest influences, 3 people I would say at the top of it would be, well, maybe 4. It would be Andre Crouch.
Okay.
Luther Vandross. Study him to this day.
Luther ain't no joke.
Genius. He's a textbook for me.
Yeah.
I studied him in and out. His approach to vocals, his approach to writing. He's definitely my favorite male R&B singer. Just leaves no stone unturned. It's just perfection. So Andre Crouch, Luther Vandross. On the musical theater side, Stephen Sondheim. He's just that left side of the page approach to music theater. Amazing. So he was my study on that side. So it was Luther, Andre, Stephen Sondheim, Twinkie, again, lefty, that like left page thing, and then maybe Tom Whitfield. Yeah.
Thomas Whitfield is, I was just telling somebody the other day, we were talking about Thomas Whitfield, and we were saying how he is the most underrated gospel artist of all time, but probably the most influential for choirs.
Absolutely. That sound is definitely that sound and approach. Oh yeah. Tri-City pretty much was an urban version of the Whitfield Company. That's still my favorite choir. I love the Whitfield Company.
My favorite Thomas Whitfield record is "Oh How I Love Jesus." That whole album
is just genius.
Insane.
Oh man, insane. Everything about it insane. And Tom,
is just.
It was insane. Tom really, it's so funny that we were talking about him. When we first recorded the first album, A Songwriter's Point of View, we did it in May. And I wanted Tom to come and do a song with us. And he couldn't do it because it was the first year he started his maestro awards. So, of course, Brian Spears managed him. Right. And once we finished the album, Brian, I said, will you think Tom will listen to this? Because it was it's gonna be my first offering to the industry. I said, you think Tom would list us and give us some pointers? So once I finished the album, I did the demos, we had done posts, we hadn't mixed anything. I sent him the album, just like the roughs, really good, but it was really good roughs. And he listened to it and he was just blown away. He couldn't believe how much he felt himself in it, to not know me and me not to grow up around him. He couldn't believe it. And he and Gwen Morton talked about it. So we set up a time to talk. He said, tell this young brother I want to talk to him. So we set up a time to talk, and it was supposed to be a Monday. Gwen Morton said they listened to the album on a Friday. He said all he did was just talk about, I can't believe this guy has me like that, and I don't know him. And he died that Saturday, and we never got a chance to talk.
Oh, no.
We never got a chance to talk. Never got a chance to talk. And the choir tells me that to this day. They tell me the same story over and over. It's like, he talked about you that Friday before he died. Like, he was just that. So yeah, I loved his approach to the choir, the way he would kind of take a major chord and sing there and stay there against all the transitions. It's what I call unavailable tension. You would have this unavailable tension happening between his big old extended chords and they're just singing that triad in the middle. I loved all that stuff. So he was a big influence. But of course, Richard, Edwin, Walter, all of them, it's a mix of that, you know.
Let me ask you something about Edwin and Andre. Those two I want to ask you about. So Edwin to me was like the Frank Sinatra or the Dean Martin or the Johnny Mathis of gospel. His voice was so silky.
It was so
silky. What did you get out of Edwin? What did you learn from Edwin? I'm going to ask Andre about the same thing about Andre, but I have a different question on Andre. But
I got you.
What was that you liked, that sound about him?
I love the polishness of it. I love his sophistication. I love his ability to sing for every audience. And I love that, you know, his 70s sound had this retro kind of hippie kind of thing going on with it. And I loved that about him. It was very retro. He was on his own thing, you know, he was kind of, you know, this is pre-Walter. So Edwin really is like the global star. He just was a global star and knew how to sing for Dean Martin or the Smothers Brothers, or turn around and sing in church. He knew exactly what to do with it. We became really close, even probably closer than me, Andre for sure. And Andre,
you was with him when he died, right? Weren't you with him when he died? You was with Edwin when he died, right?
I wasn't with him when he died, but I was with him 4 days before he died. I got to Walter's house 30 minutes after he passed away. Oh, so wow. I was there with both of them, you know. And the thing about it is, I thought Edwin just had that thing for that particular time. It was political too. So he really had a sound that worked with the Black Panther movement that happened around that time. It was just it's a very unique, he has a very unique story. And we talked, it was so funny, like his very first tour, the first stop was, well, the second stop, first stop was the big rock festival in the Bay Area. The second stop was Yankee Stadium, the Isley Brothers anniversary. That was his first gig. He said, I didn't even know we were famous. He said, we were there in that big old stadium with all those people. He said, when I played the intro to Oh Happy Day, he said the whole crowd just started screaming and ran to the stage, like just bombarded. He was like, that's when he realized they were really famous. He just said, I didn't know. And that was it. It was crazy. But can you imagine that iconic recording of the Isley Brothers? And everybody that did that concert had to sing an Isley Brothers song except for Edwin. Edwin and them did their own stuff. They were the only one. Everybody else did Isley Brothers songs.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy. So Andre, what did you learn from Andre? I know you guys were really close. I have an Andre Crouch story. I was talking to him before he passed about doing a movie on his life. And we were meeting frequently. And one of the things that I won't do it now that he's dead, because he had so many stories that only he would tell you that I could put in the movie, versus now it would just be whatever I remember and then making up the rest of it as whatever. I don't want to do that story. But I remember one time we were at his house and he goes, I said, I asked him, why did you, never get married, have children? You was a big star, most stars go get married and look the part or whatever. And he said something to me that I will never forget. He said, I never met a person or a woman fine enough that would make me want to lose my anointing.
Wow. Really?
That's exactly what he told me. I was sitting there for like 2 weeks going, what the fudge did he just tell me? Like, wow.
That's incredible. That's Andre though. He was so, man, Andre, for me, Andre's one of the greatest songwriters of all genres that's ever lived. They would just ooze out of him. Like, I just would shake my head and like, how can you write these melodies over and over and over and over? It sounds like we've heard it, sound like they've been for like 100 years. That's just almost impossible to do. He was just a flood of songs, always did. And, he told me that, he would hear songs in his sleep and he would wake up and his right leg would be tapping to the rhythm. So he would get up, get his tape recorder, put it down and go back to bed. He told me he just always hears songs. And one time he called me and he said, hey, I got this partial song. I'm gonna send it to you. I want you to finish it. I was like, me finish one of your songs? He was like, yeah. He was like, I'm just gonna sing a little bit on tape and I'm gonna send it to you. So he did. And I kept it and I lived with it. And I finished it. And I didn't let him hear it. I let the choir record it. And I didn't let him hear it until it was getting ready to go to radio. And that was Bless Me to Prayer of Jabez.
Oh, that's you. Wow.
We co-wrote that together.
That's crazy. I didn't know
and
that. Wow.
He heard that song. He called me. He was crying. He said, I had to go over. He said, I can't believe you took that little demo that I sent you and turned it into this. And I was like, that's what I heard. It was like, wow. So that was, we co-wrote that together.
So how does it feel now that these guys have passed? You're pretty much in that seat now. You are that guy. You are you at the top of the food chain. You, Kirk Franklin, Hez, you guys are now the Mount Rushmore. What does that feel like looking back at your journey and now seeing
you are in that position? What does that feel like for you?
It's kind of surreal, but it's hard to see yourself there because you was always the kid looking up at them. Right. And when you replace them, or not replace them, when you take the seat in place of them, it's hard to see yourself there because I'm still, when I go back and listen, I'm still a kid. I turned into a kid again, you know, listening to his music. And, you know, I every now and then I go, wow, you got to work with everybody you admire. It's very few people. I didn't get to work with Luther. I ask everybody Luther questions all the time. Anybody who's worked with him, I just sit down and listen to the stories because I was fascinated with him. But, you know, I love that I've been able to do great work on Cameron, do great work on the Clark sisters, to co-write a song with Andre, to write Seasons and let Walter sing it, and that become a part of Walter Hawkins' catalog because he's another one of the most amazing writers. He didn't need to do nobody, he don't need nobody's songs, you know. So when Walter would add that to his repertoire when he would tour, I was like, wow, you wrote a song that Walter added to his show that people are requesting him to sing. And so it really makes me feel great. I'm honored, and I thank God for that journey. I don't know if I ever would have thought I would have done that, but I do thank God for the journey to really, you know, I'm just amazed at that because I really am still a fan of all of them. I'll always be a fan. So
are you, let's talk a little bit about the Broadway stuff. So I know you're working on some stuff with BB Winans, his Broadway play, but you also have a Broadway play as well that you were about to do it in Chicago, right?
It was really, it's my latest album. It's called Goshen. And it's the story of the Exodus, but told a different kind of way, with a twist. And I wasn't doing straight scripted Broadway. This was going to be the dance theater.
Gotcha.
So the songs told a story with the lyric, and it was partnered with a dance company. It's a dance company here called Deeply Rooted. They're kind of pretty much like the Alvin Ailey of Chicago. And we came together, so it was going to be a duet between choir on stage and them. And we told a story in song and dance. So Broadway Chicago was premiering it last May, but the pandemic just kind of squashed it. We had prepped up, and that was going to be premiered. It's going to be my album Goshen on stage as a theatrical production, more like a theatrical event.
That's crazy.
So it was included. It had hip hop, it had ballet, it had modern, it had tribal, because all of those influences are in the album. And it was just going to be this unique 90-minute stage presentation of dance and choir. And it was just going to tell the story of the Exodus in a very unique kind of way. Not scripting dialogue, but it would just be a movement of songs and dance. So it's going to be I love dance theater too, as an art form in musical theater. So I wanted to do that. I thought that would be unique based on doing just another musical with script, which I love that too, but I wanted to do this, and that's kind of what we were planning on doing. I think we'll get back to it in 2022, but we're gonna wait and see when the theater really opens back up and stuff.
So why did you decide to release the record anyway, since you were gonna release it with the musical, right?
No, actually, we released the album first. It was like the soundtrack before the show. So we released the album a year before the show, and the show was going to follow it up. So I'm really doing Goshen extension with 5 new songs that'll carry us into next year, and we'll try to redo the same thing again.
So the music video I just saw, that's just one of the 5 songs.
That's actually one of the songs from the first release.
It is.
We're just getting to it. It's a lot of stuff on there. Yeah, it's a song you need to hear. When I was thinking about doing this, I said, I'm gonna hit him, I'm gonna send him this song, and I wanna see what visually he would do with this by directing the video.
Yes, I'm gonna direct it.
It's straight art. It's just straight art. It will be really cool. And it's a song that I ain't even gonna say it's radio or straight art. It was so good. I would just love to see what the visual would be. And it's called, there's a scripture says he rebuked the Red Sea and the water dried up like a desert. So I took that whole story and talked about how we can speak to our challenges, and the water dries up and we can cross over. So the whole final thing says you can cross over. It's just about people getting through challenges, speaking to the challenge, and not becoming a victim of the challenge, but speaking to it and telling the water to dry up and cross over. So it's that message.
Send me the record so I can hear it.
I will. I definitely will.
Let's see if we can.
I definitely will.
So I want to pivot into another section before I go into the top 5. You and Edwin are probably the only two artists that I know of that went across the waters before pandemic, and you would do gospel workshops and gospel concerts. What experience did you experience going over across the seas? I remember, I think one time you was in Switzerland. I think, was it Switzerland?
Yeah, I've done quite a bit. I kind of got around,
and it was crazy how they were like so into it. I saw like I don't know if it was on PBS or something, but I saw it on some video, some record, some network. And you had your backpack on, and you just vibing. You know, you wasn't even trying to be Donald the Star.
I just was just enjoying it.
Yeah. What is that like, seeing gospel spread across the waters from your experience?
It's amazing. Music is just universal. And, the people in America, sometimes, they don't travel abroad a lot. So they pretty much think the world is American, that's it. But when you go across the water, you really get a different type of education. What I did is I paid attention to Andre and Edwin. One of the things that they did, they didn't just go across to Europe and all these different countries and just sing. They got to know them. So I took time to hang out. And like, they're my friends. Like, I talked to Sandra Crouch about it. She said, Donald, when you make friends with them, it'll be lifetime. She said, there are people we met that we're lifetime friends. I feel like I met lifetime friends with them. But I didn't just go do music. I sat down and went to eat with them. We took drives. Some of the choir masters and people, they took me like on to see this and it's just that. And we still talk. We text since the pandemic's here. They'd call me, ask me to do things with them. I'll do it. But we just became friends. It was beyond just working together and doing music. To hear gospel over there, it's just so refreshing because their heart for it is just, they love the art form. And it's spiritual for them too, but more than they appreciate the art form like you would appreciate jazz or opera or gospel or blues or anything. They appreciate the art of it and the technique of it. They want to know from a technical and an academic perspective how to do this. And because of my education, I know how to kind of take it into the academic at the same time, make it feel the way it's supposed to feel. So it was really cool going to Sweden. There is a choir in Switzerland that I'm supposed to do something with, but I couldn't do because of the pandemic. I went to Riga, Latvia. It was the biggest surprise of my life. It was so good. And just being in that country way up, like kind of Northern Europe like that, it's just so interesting. To Barcelona, to Madrid, to London, to Norway, and to Copenhagen. I had never been to Copenhagen before.
I love Copenhagen.
And
I love it.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. I love it. And honestly, Edwin wanted me to take his music and arts over. That was one of the last things he told me. I saw him, prior to his transition. He said, Donald, I really need you to look me in the eye and tell him, promise me, you will take music and arts and you will do something with it. So my plan last year, was in April, we were gonna relaunch music and arts in Copenhagen. And then that May, I was supposed to do Goshen on stage. So both of them got canceled. So I'm hoping we can get to it next year. And even if we do, you gotta come and film, man, and create something visual out of it.
You know what? It's funny you said that. I'm not lying. I'm not lying. I literally was thinking, I've got to take a crew and do a documentary when you do that.
You gotta come and film that, man. My plan was to put all these people in the room, people from here, from London, they were all coming. They were coming from Madrid, from Ireland. I went there too. And all of them were planning on coming. And I wanted to take Edwin's vision and really go back to making it global and not just US. So hopefully we're gonna get back to that next year. And I think it's a lot there.
I'm going with you because it's funny.
I love it.
I want to do it because I really feel, and I said this kind of before we started recording, I feel really bad that nobody, maybe it was my fault, I don't know, but nobody recorded Andre and Edwin and their stuff that they did that we could watch and they could go throughout time. So it's like, now that I'm here and you're here and you're at the peak of your stuff, it's like, this is the time to do it. Technology has made it where we can literally get on a plane with a crew of 5 and make it look like we had a crew of 50. And
got you.
Just look amazing. So I am in.
Cool. The plan is to relaunch it in Copenhagen. And from there, we decided it's going to sit there or we might go to some of the other countries.
That is so dope. Do you know how
that's
dope
my
that
plan.
would be?
Yeah.
Oh my God. See, that's next.
I wanted to do that as, just taking, because I never wanted a conference. So you're not going to look at somebody on their dying bed and go, no, I don't want to do this. I couldn't do that. Everyone's my heart. Like, we were really close. I still miss him to this day. Like, we're really close. I can't even believe he's not here. So right. I took 2 years to figure out what I wanted to do to make it unique for me, to make me want to do it. And I was like, I know. I want to go and grab all the people I just met, mix them with the people that I know, and we just do something global. Because I think that's what Edwin and Andre Allen stood for. And I wanted to get back to global awareness of music and gospel, and not just US based. And I also didn't want us to come and sing to them. I wanted us all to sing together. And that's what they love, because they work at this. They don't want you to come in. They don't want to come and just be the audience. They want to do it with you. And that's what I really wanted to see.
That is so dope. So yeah.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Let me ask you this before we get into the top 5. So your sound, I had so many questions, but I don't want to take up all your time. But your sound is so, I can't even put into words, but I can say this, you can't, because it'll look weird. But I honestly don't think there's anybody in gospel that has your sound right now. And that's probably why you do so many other records, Clark Sisters or whatever, is because you have such a unique sound. What is your technique? Because it's not, you're not really copying anybody. It's really your signature sound. How do you work? How do you get that?
It's just over the years of crafting it, and also just not denying my influences. That's why I always get them props. I have influences, but when you it's like taking a bunch of spices and put them together that hadn't been put together before, you get a new recipe. And that's kind of what it is. It's a little Donald, it's a little Whitfield, it's a little Sondheim, it's a little Crouch, it's a little Hawkins, it's a little, it's all of that kind of blended for something to create something new. I think we're all influenced by different people. And so I love being one to take the journey, to continue to take the journey on, and hopefully someone behind me is continue to do that. But I think that, just my experience of being out with Stephanie, understanding that I'm a little OCD, so the detailing that comes from me being a little bit like that. And I think just all those experiences together and putting it on record and putting it on the audio, and that's what you get. That really is what you get. I'm a stickler about detail. I'm a stickler about detail when it comes to story. And that's what I do. So I do research, I'll go back, I'll say, okay, if I'm gonna redo this song, I know what he did, I need to do that. I might add something of me to it, but I want at least the root of it to be this. So we got that there. It feels like the authentic thing, and then I'll take it a little further after that.
When you did the song "Quiet Time" under Crouch, I was shocked that here's what blew my mind. The background vocals were just like Andre, right? But it was so much richer. And I was like, how did he make it? How did he take it to the next level?
It's like me with Andre,
Yeah.
So, but I know how Andre's supposed to feel. So it's making it feel like him and that a little bit, because I studied that. Because I think Andre, like Luther, those two are my favorites when it comes to background vocal arranging. Like, Andre just knew how to make the background vocals have certain character around the songs. And Luther was the same way. They had it was beyond just singing a background vocal part, but it was character-like. It was the colors of the way we do things. It enhanced the story so much, and I studied that. So it's that, plus I like the Southern in me, like that richness, that bottom, that richness. So it's putting that along with what they already did. So that's what you feel.
You doing the music for BB's play too, right?
Yeah, I did the musical arrangements, some choral arrangements. BB asked me about that years ago, and he thought I was being funny. He thought I was being sarcastic. He said, I'm doing this musical, and he said, I want you to come in and work with me on it. And I said, he said, I want you to, be the musical supervisor. I said, sure, just hit me when you got it done. And he thought I was being like throwing him off. But he said, lo and behold, 7 years later, here we are. I said, I knew you couldn't. First of all, I know how picky you are. I knew you weren't gonna be able to write a libretto in a year. That don't work like that.
Right.
And I knew that from my training. So, and I knew you're picky, and I know you're gonna want it to be great. It just ain't gonna happen that fast. And not that I was throwing you off. So we laugh about that to this day. He said, you did say, I wasn't being funny. I was like, okay, when you get it together, hit me. And he did. And the reason why he hit me is because it's about he and Cece's life told through his eyes. But it has a lot of layers to it. And just so happened I lived those layers. Like it talks about his church ringing and the whining sound in it. I knew that. Talks about him being a PTL singer. I knew that sound authentically. It talked about him and BB and CC. They did like what I call late 80s, early 90s R&B. That was Stephanie. I knew that. He also hung out with Luther. Luther did a lot of the background vocals. I knew that. Then it was musical theater. And I knew that. He was like, and then it was just straight contempt gospel. And I knew that. So I authentically knew all the worlds. So I did the musical supervision for him, background vocal arrangements. And I also coached all of the singers to put them into their role vocally for a lot of the songs. So it's a really great show. I can't wait for that to get back up and going as well. I tell everybody, if you really want to see me be like a kid, put me in the theater. It's still my number one passion. Much as I've done, much as you see me with records, put me in the theater, you'll really say, oh, that's where he's really at home. BB just laughs at me because I would just be there and I stay there all day. And he would just laugh. It's like, he just shake his head. I said, this is home.
Would you ever do acting, like play a lead role in a movie? Because I have a story for you.
It's funny you say that too. No one knows this, but when I got ready to go to college, there was a voice teacher that I studied with, and she was a Juilliard grad. So what she did was she would take her top students and she would audition them for schools. She didn't want us to go in North Carolina. She wanted us to go to what she considered the top conservatories of the country. So she would take us an audition. Cincinnati at that particular time was the #1 school to study musical theater. At that particular time, Juilliard didn't have a musical theater department. She knew that's what I wanted to do. So what she did was she took me to NYU, made me audition for drama, and they were gonna send me to do music. I won a full scholarship in drama to NYU. I didn't go. It was just straight drama. So I would have to get back into acting.
Yeah, because you're one of those people that you're just not gonna do it just because I'm Donald Lawrence.
No, because I would like to craft too much. I like to craft. No, I would want to be there. I would be open to it if I felt like I could bring the chops. I hands down, because I love it. I watch monologues all the time, but I would want to make sure I was delivering the craft, not just doing it because I'm Donald Lawrence. I don't want to do that. No, I want you to watch it and go like, wow, he like nailed it. So that's what I would have to get a coach, but I'm open. I would just have to really, I want to coach. I would really want to make sure that it just didn't look like somebody, a gospel thing, trying to do something. Yeah, I ain't trying to do that. I'm too critical about theater and the art and the delivery. So I would want to really take it real serious.
So I remember you you did something on the Clark Sisters record, the soundtrack, like the full soundtrack, right?
Of the movie?
Yeah.
For the movie? Oh yeah, I did all the music for the movie.
Did you? What did you think of the movie? The music was amazing, but what did you think of the movie? How did you feel?
I like I love Anshanu. She's just
a beast.
Amazing. Just amazing. I love the story. I didn't know that people was gonna like that story like that, but they really did like the story. And I'm cool with Christine Swanson, who directed it. I did a lot of research on trying to make sure that it was authentic Twinkie. So, it was a tough gig because, these things, especially a gospel story, sometimes they don't have the budget. It's like, hurry up and go. You don't have like that long lead time. So I was nervous because Clark Sisters got a beehive. If you mess it up there, she was live. I had like 14 days to get 5 ladies who had never met each other or sing together to duplicate the Clarks. It's because the singing, that's all the cast. That's not the Clark Sisters at all. Nowhere. The Clark Sisters even asked me if I brought Twinkie into dub, and I was like, no, that's them. But I knew their sound. I knew exactly what every voice needed to do with placement, with air, with approach to make it sound like they were in there. And so I'm proud of that. When I go back and listen to it, I was like, wow, y'all came so close to sound like the Clark Sisters. Unbelievable.
Wait. You did that soundtrack in 14 days, getting them together in 14 days?
Really, actually less. The music was the first 5 and the singing was that I actually, because you know how it is, you have a shoot schedule and you have no choice. It was like, this scene happens here, so you got to be done by here. I'm an overachiever, so I just sat down and figured out how could I get this done. And Carl, man, I will tell you, I don't know how I did it. And I knew that Lifetime, they didn't really know me for doing this. They were skeptical, and they knew they gave me something that really should have given me time-wise, and they didn't think it was gonna happen. So I think in their mind, it was kind of trying to figure out what we do if he doesn't make it. I turned everything in 2 days early. They couldn't believe it. I turned everything 2 days in, stayed an extra day and left early. I was like, they couldn't believe it. They were just like, this dude is just, because it was like 20 songs.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that soundtrack is a lot of songs.
Oh yeah, it was, all those scenes, and it was like 20 songs of music. And
so what did you do? Did you have did you do like all band stuff for 4 or 5 days and then do vocals? Is how you did it?
I did all band stuff for the first 5 days in Chicago. I finished that early. Because when we started, it was like, send us what you have when you have it. The first day I started, I had a list of what I wanted to get done. I finished early. And by the second day, we was getting through it so fast, and still it's getting through it, but also making it sound like the 80s, so it was sound research as well.
Yeah, of course.
I'm very picky about that.
Very important.
Storytelling, you got to take them back. It can't sound like so it was finding the sounds and getting that feeling as well. So by the time we got to day 2, and we was knocking them songs out so fast, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get this deadline. And as I was sending stuff in, they were going like, whoa, wait a minute. He is like knocking these things out of the park. So before the end of that week, I had got them all the band stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna come to Toronto early and start getting with the ladies. And I went in there, and we went in there, and the first song we did was "Is My Living in Vain?" When we played it back, the girl said, well, play us. I don't want to play the Clark Sisters. I was like, no, that is y'all. I don't have the Clark Sisters. They were like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, no, it's y'all. It's y'all. They made me play it over and I said, I can't believe that's us. I was like, yeah. So we knew it was going to be special.
So let me ask you this. Did you have anything to do with the casting of the actors? You didn't have anything to cast. So you didn't even know if they were even going to sound like.
Christine called me after it was casting, not before. And she told me who she casted. I gave her what I thought, I gave her my concerns. And like Angela, who played Jackie, I didn't know her. And she's really a soprano, classically trained soprano, who knew how to mimic good. So I told her where to place her voice, what to do to mimic Jackie's sound, because it's like Karen, I always tell people like this, that Karen is kind of bright and pointed. Dorinda is character, it's that rasp, but it's still like a character actor in you. I said, Jackie is like this breathy thing as a cushion to tone down like the sharpness of Karen and the rasp of that character of that. And Twinkies is rich bottom, and you got to have all that. And Denise was that soprano that undergirded Karen, the weight of Karen. So I was like, you got to kind of think of the vocals like that if you want this to play back and sound like them. If everybody sings like Karen, it ain't gonna sound like Clark Sisters. If I sing like it ain't, you got to do all of these to make it work. So I stayed on them about making sure that they didn't sing like themselves. They sang like their character, no matter what. And that's why I play back and it sounds so much like.
That's insane. I still can't believe you did that with singers not even knowing if they could do it.
Never sang together before. The first time singing together was when we was in the studio. That's it.
Oh my God, I'm shocked. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh no. No nothing. It was like, you gotta be done, because the singing shoots, you didn't have no window to mess up.
Because in certain songs, I thought that what you had done was taking old vocal tracks from the Clark Sisters and then just
that's what everybody thought.
To it.
All freshly new. I got tracks, all of them. Nothing. All that is all redone. There's nothing over there that's a sample. That's all. That's Kiera, Angela, Shalea, Christine, and played Denise. What's her name?
Kiera?
No. She acted butt off too. They played Denise. I forget her name. I'm sorry. The actress.
And you had no control over casting.
No, I had no control. They came to me after it was casted. I didn't pick them. No, I was already casted. And they came to me and just said, "Can you make this sound like?" Originally the Clark Sisters were going to cut the vocals. And everybody was going to lip to it. Christine said she hates lip syncing. She really wanted to cast a sing for real, live. And she said, can you make them sound like the Clark sisters? And I was like, I'm not sure, but I ain't gonna go down sinking. So that was it. That was it.
What was how did you, I'm sorry to be stuck on this. I'm just like learning this. How did you prepare? How did you approach doing that? Like what?
It's like I tell people, you got to understand the recipe of the Clark sisters. If you don't understand it. And see, I was obsessed. I'm the type of person that studies. So when I'm obsessed, I study every little detail. Like I'll say, no, this is the run. You got to do this so it sounds like the album. And because I was so obsessed growing up with the Clark sisters, I used to teach all the songs. I used to play the albums backwards and forwards all the time. So it was in my head. It was in my head. You know, I knew exactly what it was. I knew what the organ was supposed to sound like. Like Twinkie had a certain sound to her organ. And it was, and when you think about the Clarks, you think about the organ. Because I told them like the organ is a character of its own. Like that's a casting. So I made sure that we cut the organ. We cut the organ in Memphis, in a big church in Memphis, so it would sound like Mason Temple. When Twink would be there playing on them big speakers and stuff. So all that was done like in Memphis to give that Mason Temple sound. So I just did all those details because I think when it comes to storytelling, get that right, it just takes people back to a certain moment in time. That's
so you had already kind of, you basically like Questlove or Quentin, you just had an encyclopedia mental of
from growing up, just growing up, you know, like how you just like, I'm sure there's movies that you just know backwards and forwards.
Oh yeah.
And if you had to remake them, you know what you love about it, what feels. It's the same thing. Yeah, it's that. Yeah.
As we wrap this up, top 5. This is our top 5 section. Top 5 favorite foods.
Italian. You want 5? Okay. So Italian, vegan, American, Mediterranean, the more Greek, less Italian.
Okay.
And Brazilian.
Oh.
It's funny, I'm from down south and I don't really like soul.
I was like, you don't like soul food.
I don't really like soul food.
But you know,
and I'm telling you, my aunts and them can cook that stuff. I know what it's supposed to taste like. I just never really liked it. It's just like maybe I'll eat some yams and maybe some macaroni and cheese, but other than that, I just never really liked soul food.
But that kind of goes with your whole.
I just never liked it. My favorite is Italian. My favorite is Italian for sure, hands down.
Top 5 favorite R&B singers.
Number 1, hands down, is Luther, Layla Hathaway, Shaka Khan, Anita Baker, Stephanie Mills.
Woo, Anita Baker is ridiculous. We got a concert film that we're playing on CJC right now. All this month is Anita Baker, like 1987. When I tell you, I was sitting at my house, literally watching my own network because she's just insane.
I can't believe she still sings like that. Like her voice now is impeccable shape. I mean, you know, I didn't say, but I would also say Whitney. She's just, you know,
Whitney.
Whitney is Whitney.
Top 5 favorite gospel artists. I know that's hard, but they can be older, they can be younger. It doesn't have to be, you know, any type of decade or century or whatever.
Clark sisters, of course. Hawkins, Smallwood, Crouch, BB and CC.
BB and CC, they beast. That stuff from 88 to 93 was, you can't touch it. Yeah. Top 5 places to visit.
Barcelona.
Yes.
Number 1.
I love Barcelona.
I love Barcelona.
I love Spain.
I love Spain too. So Barcelona. I love Sao Paulo. I really love being in Sao Paulo.
I've never been there.
Latvia, Riga, Latvia. It was beautiful. Oh man, I love that. Copenhagen. I love Copenhagen. And I would probably say London. Yeah, London.
I can see London.
Yeah, London. I like London better than Paris. Most people really love Paris, but I don't know. I just enjoy London's energy different from Paris.
I like London better too.
Yeah. But most people love Paris, you know. So.
Top 5 songs that you've written. Your top 5. I know they're all your babies, but what's your top 5 that you go to that you're kind of like, wow, God, thanks.
Let me see. God's Favor, the featured Kimberly Kelly.
Yes.
There's a song on the YRM album called "Not Making Sense, Making Faith." The concept I just love. Like it's a great song, but the wisdom in it is just it's really unique. Not Making Sense, Making Faith. I love Never Seen the Righteous.
Yes.
For that. I love that. Oh man, on this new album, it's a lot of songs on there that I like because I didn't think about radio. I just thought about art. The song I was talking about, I wanted to do a song that was kind of like a few tribal influences and hip hop and gospel. It's called "He Rebuked the Red Sea." I love the song because I know it took to put it together. It's just a blend of things that's kind of crazy. I love that song, "Rebuke the Red Sea." And I think if I would say one last song, is a song that Andre inspired me to write. It's called "Beautiful Feet" on
yes, I love that.
I Speak Life. Andre inspired that song. We had a conversation. He inspired that. He told me that people will never understand when you're in this music world what you give up, that you go places and you do things and you never even get a thank you, that you leave your home all the time. And he said, but one thing I do know is at the end of it, God will remind you that because of your sacrifice, that you have beautiful feet. Wow. And that's why we write that song. Yeah.
Wow. That's beautiful. Top 5 things to do.
Travel, number 1. Shop, number 2. Go see every theater thing I can, number 3. That's my favorite pastime. I love to get to the beach and I don't like to be in the water. I like to be at the water. It just does something to my spirit. I'm so at the beach.
Same way.
And number 5 would be hanging out. And I like to go do dinner, but not for the food, for the social. So I love that whole idea of family sitting around dinner and talking and laughing and talking about old things in life. I love that, just being with family or friends that are family in a dinner setting and just socializing. I love that conversation.
Final question. There's 2 songs that I love that I listen to that has helped me through my career whenever I had either happy moments or sad moments. One song is called "I'm Blessed" off the Tri-City album, when you're talking through the song.
Yeah.
And then "I Speak Life." That one is like, I can't even tell you how many times I used to listen to that song and I would cry, literally cry.
Thank you.
Because I was speaking over things that I am doing now, trying to speak it into existence.
Yeah, I got you.
What were the 2 things? What inspired those 2 songs is a better question. What inspired those 2 songs?
The power of words inspired "I Speak Life" because of being at Bill Winston's church. He really speaks about words and what we speak. So I thought about that scripture, "The power of life and death is in the tongue." And I just always wanted to make sure that if I spoke something positive into the atmosphere so that we would get a positive return. And so that's really what inspired it. It really had a lot to do with Pastor Winston's teaching at church, sitting up under him, and his teaching on the power of words and us to really be mindful of what we speak. So it would be that. Blessed is really pretty much like a monologue. I just sit back and thought about my journey, and I just freestyled it against the track and the hook. And it really was just like a monologue, sitting there just thinking about my journey and just saying, wow, I'm blessed. What did I do to be so blessed by you? What did I do to make you allow me to be able to co-write a song with Andre and write a song for Walter and produce the clock? What did I do to really be the one to get that honor? So I just sit around and thought about my journey and freestyle it like that.
That's amazing. Beautiful. Donald, thank you for doing this.
No problem.
I can't tell you how much this made my week.
Oh man, thank you. I told you I would do it, and I told you we just flow. I'm good.
I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to hear the song. We talked about that video, and we definitely to Copenhagen, and I really appreciate the time.
Thank you, man. I'm definitely gonna be out here. When I come back to San Diego, I'm gonna hit you up.
Let's do it.
All right.
Carl Jackson Podcast. Until next time, be blessed.
Thank you for watching the Carl Jackson Podcast, and I just want to say a special thank you to Donald Lawrence and his staff for allowing me and my staff to record this and to air this on our CJC network, as well as play it and release it and broadcast it on CJC Radio and all of the podcast platforms that you listen to this podcast on. So I just want to say a special thank you to him, and just really want to say thank you all for watching this weekly, because without you, we are nothing. We can't do what we do. The lights, the studio, the cameras, none of that stuff matters if you don't watch. So thank you so much for watching. Until next time, you be blessed.